This is March. March Madness is here and it's not getting taken away like it did last year. College basketball has really been under the radar this year, and I'm sure you are probably curious who the best teams are heading into March Madness, so I took the time to just break down each one for you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to enter for your chance to win a free shirt at 63K. Follow me on Twitter for live updates on everything happening for March Madness. Now this is going to be a long one, so I organized every time below so you can skip around and get to the team you want to. But if you're just going to watch it all the way through, I wish you best of luck. I hope you enjoy. And now let's get into everything you need to know about every single team in the 2021 NCAA tournament. And as the late Heath Ledger as the Joker in The Dark Knight Circa 2008 said,
and here we go.
Gonzaga obviously is the #1 overall seed. This is a large, powerful offensive juggernaut that can score 90 points a game. It's insane. Jalen Suggs is an NBA prospect. He's polished. He looks like Russell Westbrook. Andrew Nembhard transferred from Florida. He can score. They've got Joel Ajayi, who is another great go-to scorer for them. But it's the bigs down low for Gonzaga that runs it. It's Drew Timme and Corey Kispert. They're two of the best bigs in the country, and they're both on the same team. This is by far Mark Few's best team, and really they have the best starting five in college basketball. This team gets up and down. They play very fast. They are intimidating to play against. They have double-digit victories over Virginia, Iowa, and Kansas, all high NCAA tournament teams. The Zags literally have won 14 West Coast Conference games by an average of 24.6 points. Now they do struggle versus big downhill guards, and their bigs probably don't protect the rim as much as you would like. So if this does get into a close game in the NCAA tournament versus one of the best teams in the nation, I could see them possibly falling. But Gonzaga, they definitely look like they're on their way to at least making the Final Four for sure. This is a really, really good offensive basketball team. You should not take Gonzaga lightly. And really, they've kind of fallen under the radar a little bit, so do not sleep on Gonzaga. Illinois is really playing their best basketball at the right time. Ayo Dosunmu is wearing the mask. He's really one of the best players in college basketball, in the running for Player of the Year. You've got a guy down low in Kofi Cockburn, who is one of the best bigs I've ever seen in college basketball. This man is a monster. Then they have freshman Andre Corbello, who's really coming into his own, stepping up when they need him to. Honestly, with a Trent Frazier that can shoot, with an Adam Miller that is also playing pretty well, Illinois might have the best starting five up there with Gonzaga and maybe even Baylor. Ayo Dosunmu could carry this team. Now they do get a little sloppy at times, and it's going to happen in a couple of their games, but as this season has gone on, Illinois has probably grown the most of any team. They started off very shaky despite their preseason expectations, but with Ayo missing time, this team really came into their own. Watch out for Illinois. They are a very solid basketball team, and you could definitely make a case for them winning the national championship. 100% can make a case for them easily. Now I really love this Baylor team. Scott Drew, this is his best team he's ever had. And honestly, last year's team was insanely good. This year's team might even be a little bit better. Jared Butler, Macy Oteague, and Davion Mitchell are their three go-to guards. They also have a guy named Adam Flagler who comes off the bench. They've got a guy named Matthew Meyer who is honestly could be the Dante DiVincenzo of this NCAA tournament. These guys went through a 3-week COVID pause that really wreaked havoc on this team. They had a lot of positive cases. Guys were not in playing shape after coming back, but they slowly have gotten their game back. And I kid you not, this might be one of the best offensive teams I've ever seen in college basketball in terms of just making open shots. These guys just straight up do not miss. And the thing is that they have NBA level guards. Macy Oteague, Davion Mitchell, and Jared Butler are all NBA guards. Then they have a guy like Mark Vital who is just the bully down low for them. They don't have that great center that you would want, but this team locks it up. They are just one of the best teams in college basketball and really one of the best teams I've ever seen play. I don't know what their future holds for them, but I definitely think they could make a Final Four, and I really do believe they could be the type of team that could stop Gonzaga from winning the national championship. I'm a massive believer in having great guard play in the NCAA tournament. It's something that I just always have believed in. Baylor, in my opinion, might have the best plethora of guards I've ever seen in the NCAA tournament. It speaks very highly to what I think of this team and what I think they can do. Iowa is your classic all-white boy lineup. Luka Garza is their center, who is a National Player of the Year candidate, and that guy is hard to stop. This offense really is unstoppable at times. The defense is a huge question mark, which scares people, and I get that, but they've played some great teams because the Big Ten is the best conference this year. They also played Gonzaga, and they really kept up with them. Even this year, they went on a stretch of losing 4 out of 5, but they're playing much better as of recently. There one of the best rebounding teams in the nation. They're one of the best teams in scoring offensively, and they have great ball movement. Joe Wieskamp, Jordan Bohannon, and CJ Frederick are their 3 guards. They're all outstanding players. Now, they're not an athletic team, but they have 2 coaches' sons with Patrick and Connor McCaffrey. And honestly, I think this is a pretty good team. They're not even as bad on the defensive end as you would think. They also have 2 guys coming off the bench in Joe Toussaint, who is a scrappy defensive guard for them that can change the pace, and then a Keegan Murray down low that can pair with Luka Garza that's playing so much better. I mean, I actually think this team is kind of coming into their own as the season has gone on. They've looked a million times better in my opinion, and as one of the best teams in college basketball, really they're flying under the radar. I don't know, something just in my opinion really excites me about this team, and I gotta admit, before the season started, I thought they were very overrated, but as I've watched them more this year, their defense actually looks a lot better. The one thing they do deal with though is injuries. All of their players have dealt with some sort of injury basically, and if that happens during the NCAA tournament, it could screw up their momentum, but I still really trust this team. If they get the right pool, they can definitely get to an Elite 8 and maybe even a Final Four. Are they a national championship contender? I don't think so, but they really do have a nice 8-man deep team that seem to all play very well together, and that is something that I love to see heading into the NCAA tournament. Loyola Chicago is back in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they went to the Final Four in 2018, and this season's team is insanely good on the defensive end. They force teams into long possessions, and they play that Virginia pack line style of defense. They're very fundamentally sound. They have Cameron Krutwig, who is their senior go-to big man that was on that 2018 Final Four team and a huge impact player for them, who's been a rock, a down low on offense. Now, they're not a great rebounding team at all, but Lucas Williamson, their senior guard for them, and the best defender for them, obviously, can lock the opposing team's best player down. Tate Hall, Marquise Kennedy, and Keith Williams create a great backcourt. They grind teams down. Really, in my opinion, could be a second weekend team if they get a good enough draw, and they will be ready for whoever they play. Now, their stats defensively are a little bit inflated, but they are a nice, solid team with Porter Moser as the head coach. Again, I want to mention their defensive numbers are very inflated because of their conference schedule and how things were this year. So don't look too much into how high they are ranked defensively, but they don't turn it over. They're not going to beat themselves up. They play an inside-out style of basketball, and they will run the shot clock down against you, and they can play under pressure. They do not panic, and they're not going to take a shot that shouldn't be taken. So be very aware of Loyola Chicago and their possible potential to possibly make the second weekend. Texas Tech is a really good defensive team under head coach Chris Beard. They work hard, they're active on defense. Mac McClung is their lead guard. He's their go-to guy, kind of like a Peyton Pritchard style of player. I worry about their offensive talent though, but the defense will always be there. They really fit their coach's playing style. Now they are a little bit beatable. Karen Shannon is their other go-to scorer as a freshman. I have fallen out of love with them though over the season. They are still playing hard though. They struggle to score at times, which is a concern. Are not a Final Four caliber team. They can definitely pull off a win, so don't sleep on them too much, but don't expect them to go to the Final Four like they did in 2019. Ohio State this year, they were really one of the best teams, but they kind of overachieved in some aspects. They're really just a solid overall team. They have guys like CJ Walker that comes off the bench and is kind of their distributor point guard. They have a guy like Dwayne Washington, he's their go-to scorer. EJ Liddell is honestly one of the best up-and-coming players in college basketball. He's played great for them. They've got a Kyle Young down low, glue guy. Justice Suing transferred in. Honestly, Ohio State, they are a little one-dimensional at times. They're still a very solid basketball team, but height's a big issue. They have no guy that's over 6'7". They're still a top 10 to 15 team, but are they that national championship contender that we thought at one point? I don't think so. They can still get to a Final Four. A lot of stock has dropped in Ohio State as of recently. Texas has struggled versus good teams this year. I really love their backcourt. Matt Coleman, Courtney Ramey, and Andrew Jones. I mean, it really doesn't get better than that. And then they have flexible bigs that can possibly make the NBA in Kai Jones and Greg Brown. But the problem for Texas is that they've played so bad at times. It's very hard to trust them. They had some COVID issues during the season, so really they had a pause that hurt their play. But the thing I keep seeing with them is they panic a lot and they don't have great structure, and I just really am concerned. But I do think that their potential, just by having those guards and NBA level bigs, they probably are the biggest boom/bust team in the NCAA tournament. You could probably pick them to go to the Final Four, and I would not be shocked if they could make it there. You could also pick them to lose in the first round, and I would not be shocked if they lost in the first round. This is by far the team you should really be the most cautious about, but also this team could explode if they start playing well. It just really depends. Kansas obviously did not do as well as they were kind of supposed to do this year, but I still think Bill Self is one of one of the best coaches at making adjustments in game. Having a guard like Marcus Garrett, who's one of the best defenders in college basketball. David McCormick is their big, who's really developing into his own. He's played so much better at the end of the year, but Kansas is a very tricky team to trust. They obviously beat Baylor, but that was not like the same Baylor team, and they were down 14 at half versus UTEP, so I really don't know if this team's going to be that good. Be very cautious to pick Kansas. I don't see a Final Four team at all. I don't even know if I see a second weekend team. They could get a win, but I really don't think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NCAA tournament. Missouri is tough, mature, physical. We've got a guy named Jeremiah Tillman, who is their glue guy down low, who's a senior. They've got Drew Smith, a senior point guard, and Xavier Pinson, who is their other guard in that backcourt. They are high on the fraud power ranking, though. They've beat Illinois, Alabama, and Tennessee, who were all in the top 10 at the time when they beat them. And they don't really have any bad losses, but they do have a super solid starting four. They're not going to be super crazy good, but they do have experience, and Drew Smith can win them a game. I definitely think Missouri will win a game in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if they're a second weekend team, but I do think they can at least win one game. Tennessee is a great defensive team, but the offense is a huge problem for them. Tennessee can play really well at times because they got up super high in the rankings this year, but they completely fell apart. You have somebody like a Jaden Springer, a Keon Johnson, and a Victor Bailey, and a Yais Pond as a senior guard. It looks like they can be really good, but John Fulkerson has just been bad this year, and that offense is just terrible. I still think, just purely based on talent, they can win a game in the NCAA tournament, but be very cautious of Tennessee. However, I will say this, if they can get on a run, if they can just start hitting shots, this team could be very dangerous. They were really good at one point, but I don't know if they'll ever get back to that point. Alabama is a fast-paced team for sure. They are a top defensive team in the nation, and man, I will tell you what, this team wants to get out and run. They shoot a lot of threes and are a guard-centric team. They play small ball, but the problem is they have no go-to scorer. They do have 4 guards that average 11 points, but I just worry about who gets that ball late in games. John Petty is their veteran and their senior leader. Vaughn Quinterly transferred from Villanova. Jane Shackelford is their leading scorer as a sophomore. Herbert Jones is also a long guard that can be a forward. You know, they've got a lot of good players like Jordan Bruner, Josh Primo, Keon Ellis, but there are some major red flags. They can't win outside the SEC, they struggle to get rebounds, and they lost to an Oklahoma team that was really without all of their best players. This is a team, if they wake up and they start playing slow, they could be in serious trouble. I will give them this, they can definitely shoot their way back into a game because they play so fast, and that can very much overwhelm a team in the NCAA tournament. But the problem is that time and time again, Alabama, they start off slow, or when they're not hitting shots, this is not a good team. There's going to be a game where they have a bad performance. Now, when that is, I have no idea, but I know that it's coming. You obviously would rather see that happen early in the tournament, but if they play a team that is really good, I just don't know if Alabama really is a Final Four contender. I really don't. They could still win a couple games, I can see it, but I just have seen so many red flags with them that has happened over and over again this season. I'm very concerned to pick them. Still a really good team. They've overachieved in my opinion. They have a great future ahead of them, but I just don't know about this team. Houston has Quentin Grimes, who is such a good leader for them as a junior from Kansas. He might be one of the best pure scorers in college basketball. They also have a guy like Marcus Sasser, who is a sophomore guard that is his running mate. They get a ton of rebounds. This team crashes the glass, but they have losses to Tulsa, East Carolina, and Wichita State, which really scares me. Kelvin Sampson has done a fantastic job building Houston to what it is. This team definitely could have made 2 Final Fours in 2019 and 2018, but they rely so heavily on rebounding, and they just have not beaten anybody good since they beat Texas Tech back at the beginning of the season. They also have some very bad losses, like I've said, and what happens when they play a team that can be very physical with them, because that's something that Houston does. They will pound you on the glass, and when their shots are not falling from 3, and they're playing cold, and they're playing a team that will beat them up and match their physicality, I'm concerned about Houston's potential. Still a very good team. They can definitely win a couple games, but there are some red flags. Virginia, I love Tony Bennett, but this team just ain't for me. But when they play a good team, they get outplayed easily. They will beat up on the bad teams though, but whenever they played somebody good like a Gonzaga, a Florida State, a Virginia Tech, they get waxed by them. Still a very solid team. I could definitely see them winning a game. Kead Clark is their leader who's grown up so fast. They have a Sam Hauser who was a great player as well. Trey Murphy, Reese. Definitely could see Virginia winning a game. Don't really know if they're going to win any more than that. USC has Evan Mobley. That is really all you need to know. He is a good big, super long arms, and he also has his brother Isaiah playing there as well. Their dad is an assistant there. They have great KenPom numbers. The problem is they have not played great competition. They remind me a little bit of Mo Bamba, Texas. Now, Taj Edey is their senior lead guard who can score a lot of points for them. He does a lot for their offense, but the problem is they've really struggled towards the end of the year. They've not had great momentum heading into the tournament, except for that buzzer beater we saw versus UCLA. They also rely on their bigs too much for scoring. They do not really pass the eye test in my opinion. They could win a game or two. I don't see this team as a Final Four team. Poor Villanova. If Colin Gillespie didn't get injured, maybe they would have won more. I feel so bad for Villanova. Villanova. Obviously, Colin Gillespie was injured. He's not going to be playing for the NCAA tournament. I just worry about this team. They don't really have any guards. They're only full of bigs. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, though, is one of my favorite players I've ever seen in college basketball. I love his game. Problem is, this team is so hot and cold from three. Really, their only good win is against a fraud Texas team, in my opinion. If there's one team that you should just not pick at all to get past the second weekend, it is Villanova. There's just so many things that are not going their way. And I just don't know if they have the scoring and the leadership to get past those close games in the NCAA tournament. I really feel bad for them. But you know what? When you win 2 national championships in the past couple of NCAA tournaments, some stuff's just not going to go your way. And I'm sorry, Villanova, but this team just ain't it. Oklahoma has a lead guard in Austin Reeves that averages 17 a game. The Sooners are not highly ranked, though, on KenPom, which is a little bit concerning, but having Austin Reeves is super helpful. Lon Kruger is a really good coach. They play very clean, good basketball, but, the metrics there for them do not stand out. Now, I do like their roster a little bit. They've definitely fallen off the radar as the season has gone on, but they've been in every single game they've played in. I definitely think this team can win a game. Are they a second weekend team? Probably not. They're really not as athletic as I would hope they have been, but they are still a super solid basketball team. And when you have somebody like Austin Reeves that just can put up so many points at once, who makes a lot of key shots for them, you can definitely advance in the NCAA tournament. Florida State has Scotty Barnes and MJ Walker. They don't have a traditional big like they usually do in the past. Now, they've had multiple COVID pauses this year, which has kind of disjointed them a little bit. They have a Raekwon Gray, who is like a Mark Vidal, who's a very solid just defensive player and honestly is the rock for this team. They do have a 3-headed backcourt, but in my opinion, this is not the best team I've ever seen at Florida State. 2011, 2018, and 2020, those teams were great Florida State teams. This is not a great Florida State team in my opinion. They get overhyped a little bit also. This is not a good defensive team either. Leonard Hamilton is a good defensive coach. This team is not a great defensive team. They can create complications because they play so many dudes. That's just how they are at Florida State. None of them are elite defenders like they've had in the past. They make you beat them one-on-one. If they play a team that can do that, then they will lose. This is really a poor man's version compared to last year. Just because they have a lottery pick in Scotty Barnes does not really mean anything in my opinion, because he also comes off the bench and Leonard Hamilton has just not given him the keys to the car, which I think might cost them in a big game. They've also beaten up on a bad ACC conference, and the NCAA tournament's in Indianapolis, the entire thing, so good luck winning in Indiana. I'm sorry, Florida State, this team is just not one of the best I've seen there. It really sucks because last year's team could have been a Final Four team for sure. Oklahoma State having Cade Cunningham changes everything for them. He has been easily one of the most impressive college basketball players I've ever seen. He does not look like his age. He literally looks like a 25-year-old out there. He is in full control of this offense. And really, another thing about Oklahoma State, they are full of junkyard dogs. They've got Bryce Williams that can shoot. Caleb Boone can play inside out. Cade can carry this team when he needs to. I've just been blown away by how good Oklahoma State has been. There was not a lot of reason to believe Oklahoma State was going to be one of the most talented teams this season, but having somebody like Avery Anderson, who's a really good two guard that can score a lot, Cade Cunningham, and getting Isaac Likely back, mentally, this team is full of scrappy dudes that play hard and compete. Oklahoma State is not a fraud at all. They really are one of the best basketball teams I've seen play this year. They play really hard. Arkansas, baby, that must bus is rolling. Having somebody like Moses Moody, a potential lottery pick, a JD Noe, a Jalen Tate, a Devontae Davis. I mean, Eric Musselman is really one of the best coaches in college basketball that I've ever seen. They are a really fun and flashy team, but they do have a lot of youth on their team, and that does concern me. They play great when they have energy, but at times that energy leads to fouls and turning it over, and sometimes they might lose themselves a game. They can get out-rebounded, and maybe they've overachieved a little bit. But again, having somebody like Moses Moody, that is huge. He's played outstanding basketball this year. And really, they're one of the best second half teams I've seen in college basketball as well. So watch out for Arkansas. They are going to be a challenge. A second weekend team, possibly. They haven't been there in a very long time. This team definitely could get there. Purdue has a nice mix of young players and older players. Sasha Stefanovic is their sniper. They've got two guys in Edie and Trevion Williams that are bigs that can open the floor for their shooters and are towers. I mean, Edie is 7'4", and Trevion is a big dude. They're a type of team that legit has only lost to teams with good bigs. They have decent guard play. They play really solid basketball, in my opinion. Nothing's crazy about them, but Jaden Ivey is a freshman guard that's really coming into his own. Honestly, Purdue might be one of the best teams in the Big Ten. They are super young though, but they're solid. I really trust their size, and Ivey is really coming into his own. Like I said, this team just keeps getting better. They found a way to use their bigs correctly. Their numbers are very close on both offensive and defensive efficiency on KenPom. This is a very solid team. LSU is a team that doesn't play a lick of defense. Vontae Smart and Cam Thomas are a fun backcourt, and Trendon Watford is a really good forward, but again, they don't play a lick of defense. Like, their defense is the mid 150 range on KenPom. That is terrible. They are one of the best offensive teams though on KenPom. They don't really have any bad losses though besides Georgia, so I could see them winning a game for sure, but that's about it. Yes, the defense isn't there, but the offense is so explosive, it's hard not to think they can't win at least one game, but you know, defense travels, offense doesn't always travel. We will see. UCLA has Tiger Campbell and Johnny Juzang as their guards, and legit, their numbers are identical to Oregon, who Oregon, in my opinion, is a very good team. They're not a great defensive team though, and they don't really have a front court. They might be one of the most guard-centric teams in college basketball. Their defense is not there, but they have some great guard play. I kind of like this team. They might be a year or two early in my opinion, but they do play scrappy for their coach Mick Cronin. Are they going to win 2 games in the NCAA tournament? Probably not. They're probably really going to struggle versus a bigger team, but I do think they are good enough to get at least possibly 1 win, depending on the right matchup. But again, they're just not very big. BYU has really solid KenPom numbers both in the top 30 of efficiency rankings for offense and defense. They are a top 50 team in all of the points, rebounding, and assist categories. Their top 3 players are seniors Alex Barcelo, a guard, Brandon Averett, a guard, and Matt Harms, who is their big forward. I can see them winning a game, maybe even 2. That offense is very effective, and when you play Gonzaga 3 times a year, you are obviously prepared for March Madness. They're a good team. Florida is a team that I just get so frustrated with watching. They have some terrible losses and they really can't win against any good team, but they have some sort of talent, I guess. They're just really not a well-prepared team in my opinion, and they just beat up on bad teams. I don't really like Florida in my opinion. I've actually seen them play live, if you believe it or not, and they just lost the game even though they have some really solid players. Like at a 13-8 record, that's just not very good, and they just have not beaten anybody worthy in my opinion. Yes, they have good players like a Trey Mann, a Noah Locke, but there's just so many inconsistencies with them. And Keontae Johnson, you know, having his issue earlier in the season, his team has just not been the same team since he's been gone. I just do not trust Florida at all, no matter who they play. St. Bonaventure's 4 leading scorers are all junior guards. They play a balanced style of offense and defense, which are actually both top 48 on KenPom. But the one thing that sticks out the most about St. Bonaventure is they literally have no bench at all. They have the worst bench in the entire NCAA. Yes, the entire NCAA. They could be very good next year. They have a great continuity rating though because their entire starting 5 plays together so much, which really having no bench, in my opinion, is not a bad thing. It really shows that this team can play solid together. I've seen flashes of them being very well. They've played really well in the A10 tournament. They could be a dangerous team pending the right matchup. Rutgers really had no rhythm to end the season. I'm disappointed. This team I thought was going to be way better than they actually ended up being. They play a 4-1 style of offense, but they cannot shoot from deep, so I don't even know why they play that way. I just don't trust them. They're not playing well. They can't close out games. They have some unacceptable performances against Minnesota and Nebraska late of the season. Their offense is just not good. Again, they have some great players. I was really high on this team heading into the season, but I just do not trust their offense. The fact they struggle on offense so much is just a very big red flag. North Carolina is a really big team down low. They get rebounds. They're one of the best rebounding teams in college basketball. However, they have a lot of youth. They do have a very big front court presence. Walker Kessler, Armando Bacot, Garrison Brooks. This team will rebound the ball. They are a sneaky good team in my opinion. I really love Roy Williams. If you make a lot of your shots and you can handle their size, you're probably going to beat them. They struggled a lot this year and they don't have outside shooting. That's a huge problem for them. They cannot shoot from the outside. So are they going to win a game? Maybe, but getting any further than that, I just don't think they will. Oregon is the league's most talented team that no one knows about. They have dynamic playmakers in their backcourt. Will Richardson is a junior, and Chris Duarte is a 23-year-old that is a straight killer. This dude is a savage. Now, this team has dealt with injuries and COVID pauses this season, but they are fully healthy and really playing their best basketball to end the season, just like Dana Altman wants them to be. I will admit, watching them play a little bit, they are kind of sloppy and they rely on Duarte too much, and they do not have a presence down low like we've seen with Oregon teams in the past. However, Duarte can will them to a win. This man is one of the best college basketball players you will see this season. No one in their starting 5 is over 6'6", so they play small ball, but with Will Richardson in the lineup, Oregon has won so many of their games and he's in their lineup. Really, this team's going to be underseeded and they're going to be way better than you thought they were going to be. Now, the 2019 Oregon team was much better than this team, but I do think they could still win a game, especially if they're playing a smaller team. Maybe if they play a team that can pound the glass down low, they're going to be in trouble. Again, having somebody like Chris Duarte that can will you to a win, who also has good playmakers around him, it's hard to believe they won't at least win one game. Georgia Tech is actually pretty good. I thought they were bad, but after watching them play a couple times, they're not as bad as I thought. Moses Wright down low and Jose Alvarado as their scoring guard. They are a great duo. Tech has 2 other guards that are a senior and a junior and average 10 plus, so they have a solid starting 5. They don't get rebounds, but they do get good offense, and they have good wins and finish the season really strong. Legit, honestly, pick them. They're kind of fun to watch and really play hard, and Alvarado is really good. I could definitely see this team winning a game. I didn't think they were as good until I watched them play. Now, they are beating up on a bad ACC, but I really actually like their duo between Wright and Alvarado. San Diego State is rolling through people, like literally killing teams that they've played in the season. Jordan Shackle, number 20, their senior guard. Matt Mitchell, number 11, their senior forward. They're a great duo. They play great defense, one of the best defensive teams in college basketball. Now, obviously, they don't have a Malachi Flynn this season, and they're not as good as they were last year, but the defense can really carry itself. This team does not close games out well, though. I've seen that happen. They do play kind of undisciplined a little bit, but they will beat you up. Brian Dusher is a defensive coach. They're still a really good team. I kind of like this Aztec team. UConn is going to be everybody's Cinderella pick. They have no bad losses. They almost beat Creighton, and with James Bouknight healthy, he is one of the best players in college basketball. They beat USC this season, and also RJ Cole is a good 2 guard, and Tyrese Martin is a good 3 guard. That is a great 3-headed backcourt with RJ Cole, Tyrese Martin, and James Bouknight. They get after it on the glass, which is really good, and they are a legit team with James Bouknight. Also, Jalen Gaffney is a really good shooter. I mean, honestly, UConn, they could go on a run. Are they going to win the national championship? Probably not, but Dan Hurley has himself a very nice team, and I could definitely see them sneaking their way and possibly to the second weekend and maybe even making an Elite 8. I know that's crazy to say, but really they're the best team in the Big East by far, in my opinion. I've been so impressed by Michigan this season. I think they can 100% match up with the top 4 with Gonzaga, Baylor, and Illinois. Isaiah Livers can play in the NBA. They have a big man down low in Hunter Dickinson, who's a freshman that is just absolutely dominant. They rebound, they defend, and they move the ball. Their guards are all great. Eli Brooks, Mike Smith, Sean D. Brown. I mean, I just really overall like this team. And then somebody like Franz Wagner, who is kind of their wild card player that is also going to be an NBA prospect. I mean, Juwan Howard, hats off to you. This team was not supposed to be this good, and they have been taking like veteran leaders from different schools because Mike Smith and Sean D. Brown were transfers. They're both seniors. Eli Brooks and Isaiah Livers have been there. And then they've got like some younger talent with Franz and Hunter. I mean, they just have a really nice mix. And I do worry about not having like the lead guard. Now, Mike Smith is a very good guard, don't get me wrong, but in that key situation, I don't know who's going to get that last shot, and that does concern me a little bit. And also maybe Juwan's experience in the NCAA tournament, he hasn't been there before as a coach. They play fast, they have great guards, they get to the basket, and really they play like an NBA team. Now, they have kind of slipped up towards the end of the season after really during the middle of the season really peaking and looking like a great team, but they've had a couple slip-ups that you just weren't expecting against a Michigan State and an Illinois without Ayo Dosunmu. That is a little bit of a cause for concern. However, I still really trust this team. They have a lot of experience, and they can definitely get to the Final Four. But I can't not mention Isaiah Livers getting hurt because this is a devastating injury. They can still win games without Isaiah Livers, but they are not getting to the Final Four or winning a national title without him. They are a really solid team still, but they need him. He is their most important player. Colorado is ending their season playing well. They are not a crazy good team, but having McKinley Wright as your point guard is fantastic. He can definitely win a game for them. This is why, honestly, I think they could pull off a victory. Their top 4 players are all upperclassmen, and they've beaten UCLA, USC, and Oregon. Last year, they were probably a better team, but they ended their season terribly. This year, they've ended their season actually pretty well. They're not a crazy good team, like I said, but I could definitely see them winning a game. I am blown away by this team. To go through the Greg Marshall situation before the season, and really this year, they've played all out for their interim coach, Isaac Brown, who was promoted to head coach, which is great to see. They've played Missouri and Oklahoma State and Houston and lost to them all by less than 13 points. So they've played great teams in the non-conference, and they actually also beat Houston during their season in another game against them. And really, they've ended their regular season on a 7-game win streak. With that win over Houston, they are a top 50 rebounding team. Tyson Etienne, Dexter Dennis, and Alterique Gilbert. I mean, they play with so much passion. This is a team that is a great story. They're not a fluke. It'll be interested to see how they get seeded, but I could definitely see them pulling off a win. Wisconsin is a team that I've been super disappointed in. I was high on them coming into the season because of how they really finished last year, but this year they just have not been good. They're a team that takes a lot of 3-pointers, yet they don't really make any of them. It's a confusing dynamic. I don't understand what Greg Gard is doing. And for their senior leadership, I mean, Reavers, Davidson, Potter, and Trice are all seniors, but yet they just don't really play with the energy that I would expect from them. They don't really have any urgency, and I thought this team would just have more leadership, but really late in games, they just rely on Trice to get all their points at the end, and that's That's just not a good mix, and I just have so many red flags and concerns with Wisconsin, and really they've played themselves out of getting a top seed overall. They're going to be one of those teams that in their second game, if they make it past the first round, they're going to play somebody that's just going to dominate them like one of the top 4, really one of the top 8. I don't know. I'm just super disappointed how this Wisconsin team played, and overall I just don't think I'm going to be picking them to win a game at the very minimum. So this West Virginia team is different than the ones you've seen in the past. They have somebody in Miles McBride who's a sophomore guard that's just absolutely fantastic. Maybe he's a year too early for them in being like, you know, that clutch player at the end of a game, but he's definitely their go-to player for their offense. And earlier this season, they almost beat Gonzaga. I mean, they played them so well. Then there are other guys on their team like Derek Culver, who is their forward that's imposing down low. Taz Sherman is their other go-to scorer, and then even a Sam McNeil, who I call the Southern Sniper because the dude doesn't miss from 3 sometimes. I just kind of love how this team plays. Now, they have a bad habit of giving up big leads. This is not your typical press Virginia team, not a good defensive team, really, in my opinion. They are an offensive team. So hopefully Bob Huggins can get that defense fixed in time for the tournament, because that really is their only concern. They're going to play scrappy and they're going to play ugly at times, and they've had this terrible habit of stopping lead guards late in games. Really, late in games is where I've seen West Virginia struggle the most. They can keep up with anybody, but it's closing these games out that I've seen that really concerns me. And I've seen people say this is the best West Virginia team they've ever seen, but really I think 2017 was a great team, and also 2010 that actually made a Final Four. I don't know if this is a Final Four caliber team. Maybe they're a year away, but again, if they can fix that defense, the offense is certainly there, which is a thing West Virginia's never been really able to say before. Having somebody like Miles McBride can carry you during a game. They've been in a gauntlet Big 12, so they're battle tested there. They've also played some great teams in the non-conference. You can never count out Bob Huggins during the NCAA tournament. Clemson this year has been very underrated, actually. They have some outstanding wins over Purdue, Maryland, Alabama, Morehead State, Florida State, Louisville, North Carolina, and even Georgia Tech. I mean, you name it, they have really beaten all sorts of great teams. The thing is, they are atrocious offensively. The defense is always there. They actually have a really good starting 5. They could be a sneaky team because no one's really expecting anything from them because they just don't know much about them. They don't really have a star player. They are battle tested, and they really, in my opinion, remain one of the biggest mysteries in college basketball to me. Be cautious of them, I guess, but they definitely have beaten all sorts of good teams, so I could definitely see them at least winning a game for sure. Are they a Sweet 16 team? I don't think so, but they have the wins that could get there. So really, when you look into Clemson, do your own research because this team is just an enigma to college basketball. Overall, I've just been impressed by the wins they have, and I really don't even understand how they've beaten some of these teams, but they have, and you know, you can't really hate against that, so good for Clemson. Virginia Tech is just overall a solid basketball team. They're not going to be a team that gets really hot. They're not going to be a team that plays with fire. They actually had a COVID pause that was 17 days long, and really all year they've dealt with a lot of pauses. Now, in my opinion, they have had some great wins this season, but they're just not the same team they were earlier in the year. Now, props to Mike Young for having this team playing at the level they are. It's definitely not been a step below Buzz Williams, which people had concerns that Virginia Tech basketball was going to take a step back. They really haven't. Keve Aluma is their great forward, but I just don't think this team's anywhere near the same team they were earlier in the year, which sucks. However, they're still going to be a tough out for whoever they play. Creighton remains one of the craziest teams to me. Now, they're not a great rebounding team, but they have an explosive offense, having a lead guard Marcus Zagorowski, also having a Denzel Mahoney, a Mitch Ballack that can all score. Those guys are senior guards. I mean, they are great versus good teams, but their losses, despite being close, are versus some pretty bad teams. They've dealt with injuries all year. They've also had this entire situation with Coach Greg McDermott, so I don't really know where their focus is at as a team. I'm concerned that their heads are not in the right place, and that's really not even at their own fault. It's just been a crazy situation to happen to them at the worst time possible. This team, when they are on, they are very hard to stop, but when they're not shooting well, it's very bad. They're also not a good free throw shooting team as you would think with the guards they have, and something I always see people say is Marcus Zagorowski can be that lead guy for them and carry them in the NCAA tournament. However, I've watched him multiple times, and I just don't really buy into that theory. You're going to hear it a lot during the NCAA tournament. I just don't see that happening. Call me a hater if you want, but I just don't see this team as a sleeper. Maybe they bond after this entire incident and they start playing really well, but I think that just everything that has happened to them, and I just don't trust their inconsistency, I just won't probably be picking Creighton to get very far in the NCAA tournament. That's just my opinion. Maryland has some really good wing players in Wiggins and Ayala, but this team is just not that good. You can't can't lose at the end of your season to Northwestern and Penn State. That is just terrible. They were improving though, and I thought they were getting much better, but overall they're just such a streaky shooting team, and I honestly kind of hate watching them play. I don't think I'm going to be picking them to win a game. They could definitely do something crazy because Mark Turgeon, whenever you doubt him for some ungodly reason, his team always does well, but then whenever he has a really good team, they always underdeliver. So again, they have guards that can win. I just don't think they will, but it's the NCAA tournament. You never know what's going to happen. Oh, Michigan State, this is going to be an interesting one to listen to. So obviously last year they were a national title contender, and a lot of their talent returned this year, and they added somebody in Joey Hauser who was a great big. They started out their season 6-0, but then when Big Ten play hit, they played terrible and they were bad. It looked like they were going to miss the NCAA tournament. But then Tom Izzo started giving Aaron Henry the ball more, letting him run the offense, and they had gone 7-4 to end the season basically, and had beaten Indiana twice to end their tournament dream. So they crushed them. They beat Illinois by 9 points, which was just an outstanding win. Then they also beat Ohio State by 4 points. Then they went up to Michigan and beat Michigan. So there are so many positives to end the season on, and you cannot overlook Tom Izzo's teams in March. This man has the month named after him basically, and this team has some serious, and I mean serious, upset potential based on where they're going to be ranked in the bracket. Legit, watch out for this team. I will say, in 2015, they were a 7 seed. They went on to the Final Four. I don't necessarily think this team is a Final Four caliber team, but they have veterans in Josh Langford and Joey Hauser, and Rocket Watts is playing so much better, and Gabe Brown is really coming into his own. Lee Call is always a threat. Legit, do not sleep on this team. I see a 2019 Oregon team that was really very underseeded and went on a run, and honestly they really could have knocked off Virginia if you remember. So watch out for Michigan State. You can never sleep on Tom Izzo during March. Started from the bottom, now they are here. One of the best stories in college basketball. Drake is going to be a tough out for anybody in the tournament. They're not the most talented team. They're not going to do anything crazy, but if they're healthy, they're going to play anybody a full 40-minute game that is tough, and they have been one of the best stories in college basketball this year. Utah State is a great team on the glass, and overall they had a great season in the Mountain West. They can keep up with anyone. They beat San Diego State 2 times this year and lost to BYU by 3. They're a top 10 defensive team on KenPom. They have an outstanding coach in Craig Smith. Now, they're not as good as last year, but they're still a very solid team that is well coached and deserve to be in the field. This team goes as Bones Highland goes. He's their sophomore guard that does it all. That's legit all I can really say. They are a top 10 defensive team on KenPom, but when Bones isn't playing great, they don't win. They are a very streaky team, and I just don't know if I can trust them, because when shots are not falling for them, they could get blown out, especially if Bones is not playing great. But if he is playing great, they can definitely win. Buddy Boeheim is just playing on another level. That zone is always a headache to play against in the tournament because no one is ever prepared for it. This team is red hot heading into the NCAA tournament. They're a pretty good offensive team, and the defense is always there for them because of the zone. They're actually a top 25 offensive team on KenPom. They have a high continuity rating because they don't really play a deep bench. Their starting 5 plays a lot together. This is actually a pretty good team. I don't even know if Oregon State is that good, but man, they are playing the best basketball probably in the Pac-12 right now, and have beaten the best teams by beating UCLA, Oregon, and Colorado to win the tournament title. And that's as good as it gets when it comes to beating the best teams in the Pac-12. Very happy for Wayne Tinkle. He took this team to the NCAA tournament in 2016. They were led by Gary Payton's son, and this team is straight up, honestly, a good team. Despite being picked last in the league, they are playing great basketball right now and can win a game versus the right matchup. Pac-12 is not great, but this team is playing really good basketball. They beat Oregon 2 times this year, which is a team that I love, so watch out for the Beavers. This is what happens when you piss off Patrick Ewing. I am so happy for this team. They had no reason to be here, and I mean, they had a terrible offseason for Patrick Ewing and this program, and made a downfall video about it, but this is why I love college basketball the most. I couldn't be happier for this team. They're out there playing for John Thompson, who passed away. Von Blair is a senior guard that is playing out of his mind right now, and this team will bully you on the glass. They are 8-2 in their past 10, and that win over Creighton proves something to me. This is a great story, and I'm so happy to see Georgetown back in the tournament where they belong every single year. Morehead State lost to Kentucky, Ohio State, and Clemson. However, they won 12 straight during the season and are on a 7-game win streak. Their KenPom numbers offensively are at the 200 range, but the defense is legit at a 67 right now, which is really good. They're a top 30 rebounding margin team. They have beat Belmont twice in the past 2 weeks, which is really good. Also, the last time they made it to the NCAA tournament, they pulled off an upset versus Louisville back in 2011. Winthrop is 23-1. 3 of their top players are guards and all upperclassmen. They score a lot of points, get a lot of rebounds, and even are in the top 100 on KenPom defensive efficiency. Pat Kelsey is always in the running for bigger jobs. They're top 50 in points/steals, top 10 rebound margin, and top 20 in turnovers forced. Number 8 in offensive rebounds, like I mentioned. This is a very dangerous team. They have high major talent. They are a top 15 team in tempo and top 10 in possession length, and they will attack you. They play inside-out basketball and have 4 guards that all surround their big man DJ Burns. This is a very, very dangerous team. You should consider probably picking them. Liberty is one of the slowest teams in college basketball. 3 of their guards are their leading scorers, 2 seniors, 1 junior. Darius McGee, Elijah Cuffey, and Chris Parker are their guys. Beat Mississippi State and South Carolina, 2 SEC schools. They lost single digits to TCU and Missouri, and they lost by 13 points to Purdue to open the season. They're a top 3 team in not turning the ball over. Darius is a cold-blooded killer, and they shoot it from deep and they put up a lot of points. They're a top 12 team in 3-point shooting percentage. They have quick and crafty guards, player movement on the offense, and they play at a pace that is really frustrating to stop. Even their big men are skilled. They play that pack line defense because their coach Richie McKay came over from the Virginia Tony Bennett system. Liberty is always a very dangerous team. Not as good as they were when they won in 2019, but they should cause a lot of problems in the NCAA tournament for whoever they play. They have the potential to pull off a big upset, but keep in mind they are a smaller team and their guards are smaller, so if they play a larger team, it will be a challenge, but their pace of play is something that will be very frustrating to stop. Oral Roberts is a fast-scoring team. They rank top 15 in the nation in points scored. This is a top 70 team on KenPom for offense, but its defense ranks in the low 200s. Now they have a guy named Max Abmas, who is the highest scoring man in college basketball, averaging 24 points a game, and he is only a sophomore. He alone is a scary player to stop, so if he goes off, I can totally see this team winning. This team actually led Arkansas at half and trailed by 2 to Oklahoma State and Wichita State at the half. They lost to Arkansas by 10 and they lost to Oklahoma State and Wichita State by 5. So they can keep up with anybody in college basketball. These are 3 outstanding teams. Their offense is explosive. I worry about their defense being there for them, but they can 100% keep up with anybody in college basketball, and that alone is prime for an upset. This team is going to shoot a million threes, and they are the second best free throw shooting team in college basketball, and I cannot tell you how important that is when you get to the NCAA tournament and fouls are called. They have played some of the best teams in the nation, and this is a team that if they can outshoot their opponent and get off to a hot start, they can 100% win a game. You should very much keep your eyes on Oral Roberts and possibly pick them for an upset. UNC Greensboro is a really good team. Congratulations, Wes Miller, who's one of the best young coaches in college basketball. They made it to the NCAA tournament in 2018. They are a very deep team that has 11 dudes that played in 25 games together, but it's the senior guard Isaiah Miller that leads this team, and this man averages 19 points a game. He is very explosive. They're a top 70 defensive team on KenPom, and they did lose a close game to Winthrop, which I'm very high on Winthrop, but I don't really know if this team's going to be able to win a game. Now, if that defense is there for them, and having a lead guard like Isaiah Miller is huge, and having a coach like Wes Miller, who's one of the best up-and-coming coaches and will be at a Power 5 school in no time, really they have some upset potential, so depending on the right matchup, they could definitely win a game. Statistically, Colgate is a top 10 team in college basketball, but they are the biggest question mark in March Madness. I have no clue what they are because they have played nobody in their conference and they've only played a conference schedule. If you look at their stats, they are a top 20 team in points, rebounding, and assists. They move the ball really well and can shoot the 3. Jordan Burns is a senior guard that can lead Colgate to a victory. This is a really solid group, but I just have no clue what they are because of who they've played. They are a top 10 team in the net, but I just don't know anything about this team. They are balanced. In 2019, they lost to Tennessee by 7 in the tournament. This is a team that you can't sleep on, and I mean, they are also Toothpaste University, so you gotta love them for that. They are a really good offensive team, so if the defense is not there, they're probably not winning. I'm excited to see this team play in the tournament because I just don't know what exactly this team is. Now, if Appalachian State were playing Michigan, I would be terrified for Michigan. However, I don't know if that's going to happen. Now, congrats on them making the tournament. Your long wait is over, but a team that finishes 5-6 in conference and nothing metrically stands out to me, I just don't really see them winning a game. I'm glad they made it, but I just don't expect much from them. Now, Abilene Christian is a very interesting school. They are number 36 defensive efficiency on KenPom. Their top 7 dudes are all juniors and seniors. They played Texas Tech this year and lost by only 7 points. Then they played Arkansas and lost 85-72, which in my opinion is a close game. They're on an 8-game win streak. They're ranked top 10 in assists. They force the most turnovers in the nation. They're top 5 in steals. I love them, but the only issue that I see is that they really, and I mean really, have not played anybody. So I wouldn't go too crazy in picking them to beat somebody, but a lot of things line up for them to possibly do that depending on the right matchup. This team made the 2019 NCAA tournament but lost to Kentucky pretty handedly, and a lot of those guys were on that team, so maybe they're wanting revenge and they might be a team that has a chip on their shoulder heading into the tournament. I could definitely see them winning if they played a bad offensive team. Dennis Gates is an awesome coach, and he was an assistant at Florida State for almost a decade, and he took over a mess in 2019 at Cleveland State. He has done great things for them, and this team straight up has earned everything they've accomplished. They had an awesome bench this year that will hype their their team up. Their top 4 scorers are all upperclassmen guards, and they are a scrappy team and really won't be scared of anybody. They actually played Ohio State and lost by 6, and I really believe in this team. I mean, I could definitely see them winning a game. They have that special ingredient that you can't really explain. Watch out for Torrey Patton. I really think this is a well-coached team that has something really special brewing. No matter what happens, this team is a great story. Congrats on the Mount making the tournament. This team is ranked in the 230s on KenPom, but they have a man named Damian Chungquee, who is their best player, and that name alone deserves a W in my book. This, however, is one of the lowest scoring teams in college basketball, so don't expect anything much, but congrats on making the big dance. Congratulations, Drexel, on making the tournament, but I just don't see much from a team that had a losing conference record. This is obviously an incredible accomplishment for them, and statistically, their offense on KenPom is in the top 70, but their defense ranks in the 250s. Their best player, guard Cameron Winter, is a junior that averages 17, but I just don't see this team winning a game. North Texas is a top 75 KenPom team and a top 40 defensive team. Senior Javion Hamlet is their lead guy, and this is a very well-coached team. They have played Arkansas, West Virginia, and Loyola, and lost to Loyola by 8, West Virginia by 12, and Arkansas by 15. So they can keep up with the best teams. They're going to be a tough out, and they just beat Western Kentucky, who has an NBA big in Charles Bassey. They're going to be a very tough team for whoever they play. Rick Pitino is back and has Iona in the NCAA tournament in his first year there. They're not a very talented team at all, but just having Rick Pitino there is a scary thing for any team to face. They're going to be a tough out if you play bad. They're just a nice team with a good coach, nothing truly special there, but still a cool story, and Iona is always in the NCAA tournament, so they have experience. If you play fast, you will probably beat them. Johnny Jones was the coach at LSU when they had Ben Simmons, and he's the coach at Texas Southern. He is a really good coach, and this team has experience. This is a big team that can get rebounds. They are a top rebounding team in the nation. They are also on a 14-1 win streak in their past 15. Now, they're not a deep team. They probably won't win a game because they don't have a huge go-to scorer, but they will be a tough team to play. Grand Canyon is coached by Bryce Drew, who's also a really good coach, also a former Valpo coach, and his brother is the head coach at Baylor. Their 2 best players are massive centers that are both seniors, and they are a top 15 team in points allowed. They're a top 100 defensive team on KenPom. They have beat Nevada. They lost to Arizona State by 1 and lost to Colorado by 10. They play inside-out basketball, but the problem is their guards are not really that great if they're not hitting their shots, and they struggle to create, and they can be a streaky team at times, but just having a good coach like Bryce, this is going to be another tough team that will be a tough out for anybody that plays them. Eastern Washington can shoot the 3 and are a veteran team that has great continuity. They lost to Washington State and Arizona by 3 points and kept it close for most of the game versus Oregon. They're a good offensive team and are 13-1 in their last 14 games. Now, Norfolk State is ranked in the 200 range on KenPom, but they did pull off one of the biggest upsets ever when they beat Missouri in 2012. Vontae Carter and Joe Bryant are great guards for them. They can score versus anyone. I just don't think they have the size to keep up with the big dogs. If they are making their shots though, they can keep up with somebody, but if not and they're missing, they are toast. The Gauchos are in the tournament and they have a talented team that is a top 70 team in KenPom. They are going to be a very tough team to play against, and they are 22-4 this season. Their defense is very hard to break. They really don't have a weakness and have a lead senior guard in Ja'Cory McLaughlin. He is a bad man, and good luck stopping him. This is a pretty solid team overall. Hartford is not a great offensive team, but they are a decent defensive team. They are a good story, and I'm happy for them that they made it. They did lose to UConn in their first game of the season by 12, but other than that, nothing really stands out to me. They are not a team that will beat you down low, so it's going to take outside shots for them to win. Ohio is one of my favorite Cinderella teams heading into the tournament. They're a great 3-point shooting team. They don't turn it over, and they are a top 10 team in 2-point percentage. They drive the basket very well, but this team is led by the LaMelo Ball of college basketball. His name is Jason Preston, who defines the name point guard. They also have a man named Ben Vanderplas, who is a great post player for them and can shoot all over the court. This team is deep. They're one of the best offensive teams in the nation. They don't turn the ball over. They pass the ball super well. Jeff Bowles is a really good coach. They're 9-1 in their past 10, and this team lost to Illinois by only 2 points, and they almost beat them. I'm telling you, just pick them. Every time a Cinderella team has an NBA player, like a CJ McCollum in the past at Lehigh, they usually have a good chance to win. So pick this team. Now, they can get out rebounded by a physical team, but this team is clicking right now, and their defense is playing much better. I can't wait to watch Jason Preston, and I hope you guys get a chance to witness this kid. He is fantastic and really one of the best stories in college basketball that I have ever seen. Okay, congratulations, you made it to the end. I hope I did a good job explaining every team for you, and if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comment section. I would love to answer your questions. Also, make sure you check out my recent videos for college basketball content. Make sure you say subscribe to the channel for future college basketball content, bracket breakdown videos, and how to pick a better bracket based on past NCAA tournaments. I can't wait to be wrong on all my predictions. It doesn't really matter because that's the whole fun of March Madness. It is one wild event. Thank you for watching. You can follow me on Twitter for updates on March Madness. I will see you in the next video. Peace.